HealthWise Alternatives with Jackie Bell, promoting good health through information and education.
Welcome to HealthWise Alternatives. I'm your host, Jackie Bell. As you know, the purpose of our show is to bring you information about natural, holistic medicine. Today we have invited a very special guest who is doing more for the resurgence of natural medicine than most of us, because in her vision of a healthy world, she understands that natural medicine is but one aspect. She understands that the lifestyle we need to embrace to ensure a healthy world for our children also includes the food we eat and how we grow it. And it includes how wisely we tread on the environment. Margie Baldwin is well known in our Massachusetts South Coast for her involvement in innovative and far-reaching community projects. She has lived here in Marion, Massachusetts for 35 years. She served on the planning board for 10 years and is the chair of the Marion Tree Committee. She also has 14 years of experience as an EMT. Margie has been involved with the Marion Institute since it began in 1993 and helped to start the Paracelsus Biological Medicine Network, where she works to help practitioners and patients learn about European biological medicine. Margie is also involved with the Bioneers by the Bay, an annual environmental conference in New Bedford. 2 years ago, Margie started a project called How on Earth, with the intention of creating a local, organic, sustainable food system. We are dedicating this show to learning about How on Earth, its vision and goals, and benefits for our community. Let's start with talking about the vision of How on Earth and how on earth it came together.
Well, like most things with the Marion Institute, it's something that bubbles up out of our own curiosity and need to learn about how to live a better life. And about 3 years ago, the Marion Institute partnered with the Coalition for Buzzards Bay, and we held a series of workshops around global warming. What could we do in our own backyard to help stem the tide of global warming? And one of the evenings was around food, which we held in Marion at the Music Hall, and we had over 100 people show up. And there was such enthusiasm and curiosity and interest in local organic farming that we decided, well, we need to do something about this. Because this area had a rich heritage of farming, dairy farms, and as well as growing of crops. And of course, the market for real estate was such that a lot of the farms gave up their land for housing lots and the like. But with global warming and the increase in transportation costs and the fact that we're shipping food all over the world, it's soybeans from China, and our strawberries in the middle of January are coming from South America, etc. We decided that we needed to create awareness around that. And we started a farming venture in Rochester with a farmer, Lucky Field Organics. We leased 7 acres the first year, and we're now up to 16 acres. This is our 3rd year. And we started a CSA, and a lot of people don't know what that is. That is about community-supported agriculture, where you give the farmer money up front for his farming efforts, and then during the season, on a weekly basis, you go and pick up a certain poundage of vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables. So we needed a CSA site, and we found a property in Mattapoisett that was for lease. And we started with that 2 years ago, and we had about 50 people sign up. Last year we had 200, and this year we expect to have around 300 shareholders. Wow. But then what happened was, I compare it to like a crop of asparagus. It takes 3 years for asparagus to come into season.
Right.
And this year, the store has taken on a life of its own. We have we sell vegetables to the public, not just CSA shares, because that's a seasonal thing. So we try to sell year-round. Lucky Field Organics has 5 greenhouses, so they've been able to extend the season. We also source from other local farmers. We have cheese and dairy. We have a crop around here that's called Macomber turnips, which is grown in Dartmouth, which is indigenous to this area. It's a delicious turnip. But we scour for local products. And sometimes they're local and not organic. Sometimes they're organic and not local. We try to get the best of what we can find. And we don't have everything. We're not a supermarket. But it's about creating awareness around our eating habits, eating seasonally, eating fresh. And when you start thinking about being what is termed a locavore, that became a dictionary word in 2007. And it's about eating within your local area. Now you can decide what the radius is. You can be hard-nosed about it and decide that it's 50 miles, or you can say it's 150 miles, whatever you decide. For us, we bend with the wind. Our maple syrup comes from New Hampshire, but the dairy comes from Rhode Island, and the eggs come from Dartmouth, and things like that. But by eating locally, you're supporting your local economy, and you're giving back to the money that you spend. You're giving back to the farmers in your area. You're also contributing to your community spirit. It's interesting when people come into the store, they don't quite know what we're all about. Are we a health food store? Are we just about organic vegetables? And when they start looking around at the different products we have and look at where they come from, they're intrigued that in their backyard all these things are being made. And so we then put in a kitchen, because what happens is that, as everyone knows, in the middle of July and August, you're inundated with squash and tomatoes, and so you got to do things with them. So we started to make our own marinara sauce and do some canning and making applesauce from the apples that were grown in Acushnet, strawberry jam from the strawberries in Rochester, or a corn relish from the corn, down the road, things like that. And then we started serving light meals, sort of cafe meals, lunches and salads and quiche. The bread is made in Rochester by Artisan Kitchen. The cookies are made by Flour Girls, which is a woman in Marion that makes the cookies that we sell. So it's been fun sourcing these things and finding out about all the different things that people are doing. And we also have herbal remedies by a lady who lives in Westport and brings her herbal remedies to us. And another woman in Adamsville has creams and beauty products. So it's been a real learning experience. But I think the store has grown organically, and the idea about eating organic food is really taking hold these days. I mean, there's Michelle Obama digging a garden at the White House, because Alice Waters out of California, who's been so instrumental in being a proponent of organic food in the edible schoolyard, connecting kids to food and growing food. So Michelle Obama took that on, and there she's got her garden going. And that's just an example of the kinds of things that people can do for themselves. They can just take a plot in their backyard, or maybe a neighbor has a little more land and they want to share it. Well, go in on it with them. You buy the seeds and do some of the labor and share in the harvest. People can join a CSA in wherever they might live, or they can go to a farmer's market. There's, I think there are 3 farmers markets in New Bedford, and there's one in Rochester, and I know there's one in Dartmouth. And so I think that the more people are aware of what's happening in their local area and who's growing things and being connected to that, it's very gratifying.
It is very gratifying. And I can see it's an old way of life coming back, because it's a healthy way of life.
Yes. In World War II, there were something called the victory gardens. People just tilled up their backyards because they couldn't get food. Everything came to a grinding halt. And that's kind of where we're at these days. We can't have the lifestyle that we've had in the last 50 years. It isn't working anymore.
Right, the big farms.
The big farms, the big agribusiness.
Right.
I mean, look at the scares we've had with E. coli in spinach.
Right.
And the peanut butter scare. We don't know where our food is coming from.
Right.
But if it's local, you do know where it's coming from.
Right.
And people come to our store. Some people, we have customers just come for the eggs because the eggs are so delicious. And they're not all white or brown, they're blue and there's a little pink hue and they're extremely colorful and different because the chickens are all different and they're all out in the yard.
Right.
You hear these things about grass-fed and free range and shade-grown coffee, and these are things that are coming into the forefront.
Right.
Shoppers are getting very savvy as they go down those supermarket aisles.
Yeah. Now, you call this a sustainable food system. What do you mean by a food system?
Well, a food system meaning that you're growing it in your local area, but you're also partnering with others. I mean, we don't grow everything at Lucky Field Organics. There are other farms in the area that they do a better job with the cauliflower or the broccoli.
Right.
And not everybody can grow the asparagus. So it's joining forces like that, trading off. People go to farmers markets and take other people's produce for them, that kind of thing.
Right.
So to make it sustainable, I think it's about community farming.
Right.
And it's about cross-pollination and helping one another to build a food system in the area. And one of the organizations that's very instrumental in that is called CMAP, Southeastern Mass Agricultural Partnership. And they help farms and farmers find business links. For instance, Lee's Market in Westport is very much interested in local growers and in contracting local growers. You grow the squash for us this season, kind of thing. And then that farmer knows that he's got a ready market for his squash, and he doesn't have to go out and figure out where he's going to sell it, kind of thing. Right. So I think that helps a lot. And I think Sid Wainers is getting more into that. He's got a beautiful farm in Dartmouth where he's growing a lot of herbs. But the idea of transporting everything from California and Mexico and is just not sustainable.
Right. And do you see this as a paradigm that can be duplicated and repeated in other communities?
Oh, very much so. I've having been in this now, my awareness has certainly been raised to a whole new level in what's happening in other communities. And going to meetings, whether it's NOFA, which is the Northeast Farming Association, or there's a meeting at UMass on Wednesday about a regional food system. There are so many knowledgeable and keen young people that want to do this work. They want to get back to the land. It's not just the 60s hippies. They're trained, they've been to school, they've taken the courses, and they can't afford to buy a farm. So there are programs that are helping foster that, and internships and the like that organizations like CMAP are helping to do to get these young people on these farms and to create the next generation of farmers. Because a lot of the old farms in this area, those people have been at it for a lot of years, and they're not giving up, but they're getting a little tired, and they need some young, energetic help. Yeah.
What are some baby steps that someone could take to support and strengthen this system in our own community?
Well, again, I think it's like thinking about what one thing would I like to grow. Maybe it's just a tomato plant in a container on your deck, or a pot of herbs. Where's your local farmer's market? Going and taking a trip to the farmer's market on a weekend. Joining a CSA and getting a weekly stipend of fresh vegetables. Reading your labels. You know, that's a really easy thing. One of the bywords is that if your grandmother couldn't pronounce it, don't eat it. So I think being a smart shopper, looking at the ingredients. You hear so much about the plastic these days, the BPA in the plastic, and recycling, composting, starting a little compost pile this summer, and just seeing what happens with that, and or maybe even getting a rain barrel to put under a spout in your roof and collecting the water for watering. All these little measures help, and if everybody took a little piece of it and did it for themselves, it's the kids that get enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, I think a great children's project would be to take a week or two in the summer and challenge the kids not to eat anything out of a box or a package.
There you go.
And see what they can come up with.
There you go. Well, we helped at the Marion Institute, we helped start I refer to it as an edible schoolyard. And it's just a little plot that's right outside the school, in the 3rd grade is managing it. But by managing the garden, you've got all the different lessons to be learned. You've got math, you've got history, you've got just
science,
a whole array of things. Yes, exactly. To learn from just a little plot of land and what you're going to grow in it. And it's very exciting to see the kids out there. And then we do with Lucky Field Organics every fall, we do a sort of a harvest in the cafeteria where they come and do a tasting and trying new things. All it takes is just, I remember one little boy saying, "Ooh, what's that?" And then his friend said, "Oh, I'm going to try it." Well, it was a nasturtium blossom. Well, before I knew it, everybody was grabbing the nasturtium blossoms because it was kind of peer pressure type.
Yeah.
But they ended up liking them, and trying these things and saying, "I didn't know where this string bean came from." So when they see where it actually grows and they had a hand in growing it, then that makes a huge difference.
Must taste better too.
It tastes better, exactly. And the school lunch, that's a whole nother thing. If we were to get big enough, we'd love to have fresh vegetables being sold to the cafeterias. And that's tough because it's all about bottom line and the cost of food, and they have contracts, and they have for food service that have have already pre-purchased all their fixings. But slowly but surely, I think the cafeterias are learning about what's healthy and what isn't, and not having pizza and hot dogs every day, and making peanut butter sandwiches with whole bread instead of just white bread, and things like that. And the kids all sort of turn up their noses at first, but then they get intrigued, and it gradually catches on.
So where do you see How on Earth in the next 5 years or 10 years, or even in the long term, say 25 years? What would you hope to see the progress?
Well, I'd like to see a lot of How on Earth. I don't think we have to be the only model. I feel it's just like with the CSAs. The more that's out there, the more awareness there is, the more local economy there is around farming and eating. I mean, what is more basic than where our food comes from?
Yeah.
And by growing organically, you're nurturing the soil and the water, and you're enriching the topography of the area. Yes. And it just keeps feeding on itself. They've done studies about the nutrient level in organic food, and it's 30 to 40% more.
Right.
And I've had people come into the store and say, since you opened, I've been eating nothing but organic food, and I feel better. And they do. It's just the taste is so different.
It is different.
Yeah. So everything we make in the store, whether it's on the lunch table or at breakfast, it's what we have in the store, and it's organic, and people notice the difference. And a lot of the local farms here that are raising pigs or sheep or goat or cattle, they don't have large herds, but so they'll sell to restaurants, local restaurants, because they'll take half a cow. That's one of the problems around here with the animals is there's no certified USDA slaughterhouse. And that's a big problem because we obviously can't sell anything in the store without it being USDA certified.
Right.
But a restaurant can take half a cow and they can use the whole thing, in their cooking, in their menus, etc. And the Four Seasons is buying from a farm in Dartmouth, and a couple of the restaurants in Federal Hill in Providence are buying from local farms. And as I mentioned, the eggs are just amazing. And there's cheese making that's starting as well. There's a wonderful young woman who's doing cheese making at Narragansett Creamery in Rhode Island. She went to Europe to learn the trade, and she's come back to bring it back to this area.
And has the economy spread a little bit into clothing or
yes,
knitted goods and things like that?
We don't have the clothing, and because we just don't have the room. We're really about food. Right. But I have lots of people that come in and say, my daughter knits these, or I make this, or and I'd love to see more of that come into stores. There's a little bit in some of the surrounding businesses, but it's there's a lot of talent around here.
Yeah, I think we'd be amazed too, and training the children to enjoy it. We used to learn how to knit or crochet or embroider or something from our grandparents.
Yes,
and now that's
very much of the Rudolf Steiner schools,
yes.
the Waldorf schools, where you have music and you have knitting or sewing or something like that, and it's great. There's a little class at Sipacan. The 5th graders are learning how to knit, and they've been knitting hats for my friend to take over to Nepal for the Nepalese children in the villages. So.
Well, it's very impressed with the whole project, and not only how it affects each individual who walks into the store, but also how it affects families and how it's infiltrating in a positive way our school system, and thus will affect the way that our children regard our food and agriculture and the economy. Being more conscious of locally grown things. So,
I think it needs to be in the hospitals as well. I mean, hospitals, I'm afraid, are notorious for not having the best nutritious food.
Yes.
And I think that's coming as well. That hospitals are they've now getting into healing gardens and integrative clinics and alternatives, and I think that's coming with the food as well.
Well, Margie, thank you so much for being on our show. Your work with How on Earth is truly an important cornerstone to the future of our health, of ourselves and our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jackie.
I'm Jackie Bell. Join us again next time on HealthWise Alternatives. This season on HealthWise Alternatives, we will be interviewing holistic medical doctors, practitioners, and counselors who will explain natural medicine approaches to health and disease. HealthWise Alternatives is created by The Woman in You and Take One Films. Check our website, thewomaninyou.info, for scheduling information or contact your local cable access.